And Sarah, over the weekend, Jeff Zrebiec combined with Diana Rossini, NFL insider, and Jeff, of course, is a Ravens insider. They put their two minds together and put together a really insightful piece, thorough reporting on what led to the ultimate decision for Steve Biscotti to pull the plug on John Harbaugh after 18 years. Let's get into some of our takeaways from that piece.
Yeah, so I thought this was really well done. And like I said, I mean, not that he's perfect, but there's nobody I trust more when it comes to reporting on the Ravens than Jeff Zrebiec. So this was a good read from my point of view. I wanted to pull a couple of things that he put in there because kind of the question here, Bobby, is people are kind of wondering, like, was it kind of nasty work or did Steve Biscotti kind of do John Harbaugh dirty in the way that he let him go? And also there's lots of questions. And I felt this way in Mexico. I was like, oh man, I hope something big doesn't happen. I hope something big doesn't happen. And then Monday goes and Harbaugh's still there. I'm like, okay, I guess I made the right decision to go. And then most of Tuesday is gone. I'm like, okay, Harbaugh's staying until he wasn't staying. And so Jeff Zrebiec and Diana here are kind of looking into what happened in that 36-hour window, because when he talked to people inside the building on Monday, everybody thought, yeah, John's remaining back. And they even felt that way as early as or as late as Tuesday afternoon. So this is what Jeff and Diana had to say. They write, as players cleaned out their lockers and said goodbye to their teammates, Harbaugh conducted one final team meeting, thanking his players and coaches for persevering through a season that challenged them at every turn. This is what one Ravens veteran player said, quote, "We exited the meeting thinking there would probably be a few coaching staff changes, maybe a coordinator change. That's usually how it works. Then the next day, everything got turned on its head." That's what one veteran player said. So they all felt like John was sticking around. So according to Jeff, what happened is Harbaugh had a meeting Monday morning with Eric DeCosta, Ozzie Newsome, and team president Sashi Brown. And John's discussing his vision. This is what they do every single year. They're like, one person who was close to the situation said, okay, it was unsettled, meaning like there were still decisions that needed to be made. But this anonymous source says that there were people in the building advocating for Harbaugh's return. But then around 5 p.m. the next day, players are getting phone messages. They're seeing stuff on social media. He's fired. They're all shocked. One player said, I was shocked. And then Jeff writes, well, he wasn't alone. Jeff asks, what changed in the hours between Monday morning and late Tuesday afternoon for Biscotti to reach the franchise-altering decision? Then he said later, it wasn't because it happened, I guess, on the phone. Biscotti had to go back to Harbaugh on Thursday. He says, when emotions had settled, to go back and further explain to Harbaugh his decision. And so why did he have to go back on Thursday? Because according to Jeff and Diane, Biscotti fired him over the phone. That it wasn't like this face-to-face thing, which you would expect after 18 years. It wasn't like, hey, I've thought about it. Let's sit down. Let's have a calm environment. I'll either come to your house or you'll come to my office or we'll go to dinner, something. It was just over the phone. So Steve had to go back when emotions had settled. That tells me, I just wonder, Bobby, if he entered that phone conversation with the mind saying, for sure, I'm firing him. Or if he went into it talking about some issues and then maybe the way the phone call went, he went ahead and did it. I don't know. These are questions that I want asked tomorrow at his press conference when he speaks at 2 p.m. Why over the phone? It doesn't seem like Steve Biscotti's way. And why did he have to go back on Thursday when emotions were settled? But here's what may have changed. Okay, so yes, a lot of people thought that Harbaugh was coming back, but Steve Biscotti started making a bunch of phone calls to players. Okay, and then so according to Jeff, and Bobby, you can jump in here anytime you want. I'm just trying to give the layout, and then maybe we can both react. Okay, perfect. Okay, so obviously there was a lot of noise throughout the season with leaks about Todd Monken or other stuff. So there seemed to be more just talking that made it to the media than you'd seen in previous years. So this is what Jeff writes. He goes, there's plenty of noise about Harbaugh too. One Raven said Harbaugh's message in meetings, quote, rubbed some people the wrong way and could be contradictory. He said Harbaugh would challenge players to focus on the upcoming game, then go on a tangent about the future. Harbaugh, one player said, also didn't necessarily click with some of the team's younger and more talented players. Quote from this player. He says there wasn't the best relationship with your star players, but I don't think people were necessarily at the fed up stage. It's hard to please 50-plus guys, and when you're losing, everything is magnified. But I never had the sense that this was really bad. Or that he lost the locker room. Other guys may tell you differently. So this veteran player is saying, yeah, there's differing opinions, but it wasn't like a fed up stage. Then another veteran player agreed to Jeff and Diane, saying that the notion that Harbaugh lost the locker room was, quote, BS. He said the Ravens locker room was like others he had been in, where there were supporters of the coaching staff and dissenters. But the complaints about Harbaugh were often trivial. Quote from this other Ravens veteran player, that's always an easy blanket statement when a coach who has been there a long time gets fired. But I don't remember any instances where guys thought he lost the team. Jeff writes, several players and coaches, however, acknowledged there was an awkwardness in the Harbaugh and Monken dynamic with Jackson. All three have rebutted any suggestion that, they didn't get along. So there can be a world where it's like they got along, but there also wasn't necessarily chemistry. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't mean that he has to lose the locker room, that they're all angry and they're all talking bad about his behind his back. But there can be a section of guys being like, I don't really love him. And maybe he lost that chemistry. Maybe there wasn't a lot of chemistry. And even listening to that interview with Todd Monken, he said it could have been better. Where they're like, I don't know, was there like a huge rift? Not based off of what I've seen Lamar Jackson comment on Instagram, right? That there wasn't like this big rift, but was there chemistry? What were things really clicking? That's what I'm seeing maybe was lacking. And then as Jeff points out at the end, and this is to sum it up, he says, it isn't clear how much Biscotti was affected by his conversations with players. However, it's hard not to connect the dots. There was a belief in the building Tuesday morning that Harbaugh was returning. By late Tuesday afternoon, he was out. And what happened in between? Steve Biscotti talking to players. And that left Harbaugh, he said, more surprised than stunned. So I don't know that it means that he had terrible relationships, that people hated him, but something was said where they obviously weren't, or enough of them weren't like going to bat for him for Steve Biscotti to say, okay, let's run this back. And the only thing that had changed in those 36 hours was his interviews with players.
Got a couple thoughts on all these things. As it relates to our question of what will become a repurposed video in our best of section, did Steve Biscotti do John Harbaugh dirty? I think it would be disingenuous of me from my vantage point as I sit here to say yes. And here's why. There's no perfect way to make the decision that Steve did last week. And I can only imagine just how excruciatingly difficult it was to make that decision. And there's a reason, Sarah, why you just read what you did related to the buffer period, essentially, that he needed to give himself and John until Thursday to have a more in-depth conversation. I think you could probably go all throughout the league, and I don't know if you find a more unique, more deep relationship from owner to head coach than seemingly these two have had for close to 2 decades. And with that comes a lot of emotion, a lot of deep-rooted feelings. And I can speak to this having made mistakes in my past in this career with a microphone in front of my hand or in front of me. Sometimes emotional intelligence goes below the wayside when things are when tempers are running and times are tough. And times have been tough in terms of Ravens standards in recent seasons. And so I can't sit here and point the finger at Steve for making the decision in terms of how he decided to inform John Harbaugh. The second part of what I had to say as you kind of were going here, I had a chance to connect with Todd Monken over the phone at the end of last week for about 20, 25 minutes. And for those asking, because I did tease it at the end of last week, Todd has another interview today. Hence why he is not inside the vault. So unclear in terms of, and I wasn't going to pry, unclear in terms of whether or not that's with Cleveland. We'll have a slide on that coming up. They have interviewed him at least initially to be their next head coach. So not sure where his other interest is, but he hasn't interviewed today. So I just heard from him late last night that he couldn't make it today. But one of my biggest takeaways, Sarah, from that conversation with him was that, and as you heard with Ryan last week, extremely complimentary of the Ravens organization, right? Was quick to diffuse any noise out there of this perceived rift between he and Lamar. But my biggest takeaway, I think he was ready for a change. And I think that speaks to what you and I both believe, that things had run its course. And we're not just talking about with John Harbaugh. Perhaps the way this was constructed, this Ravens organization, both personnel-wise and staff-wise, had run its course. And I think Todd was aware of that. I do. And that was my biggest takeaway from our conversation.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that I totally agree. Like, that's it. You don't need to besmirch somebody's character or their reputation to say it was time. And I just wonder if that was the sentiment that Steve Biscotti was getting. And to your point on the question of, like, did Steve Biscotti do John dirty? Like, listen, I never would have predicted that. In fact, I said earlier this year, like, if Steve Biscotti moves on, they're going to do it in a really nice way, right? They're going to maybe find him a Michigan job, or like they're going to have like this mutual thing, and they're going to show. So I never would have predicted in a million years, oh yeah, things got heated over a phone call in the car, and then Steve Biscotti fired him. So I'm going to wait to give my full opinion on that. I want to hear what Steve Biscotti has to say tomorrow. I'm sure this question will come up. Jeff reported it. I'm sure Jeff will ask it. He should be able to, or Diana will be in there. She co-reported it and she can ask it, how that went down, why a second conversation was needed. Was that the way he wanted to do it? All that kind of stuff. So I want to hear his side of it. And eventually we'll get John's side of it too. I mean, eventually. Yeah. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm interested in hearing both sides when all is said and done. But I know that there's a mutual respect between the two of them. And I'm sure John has had to deliver bad news. And I bet there's been times where he's like, well, that's not the way I wanted to do that, because he has to deliver so much bad news all the time. And I'm sure he'd be like, I wish I had said it differently or done it differently or whatever. So did I think it was going to go down this way? No. Do I think John Harbaugh was deserving of a better way of being let go? Sure. But I want to hear how that phone call went down.
Meanwhile, the NFL waits for no one. And John Harbaugh has vaulted to the top. Not only has he set the National Football League ablaze, and perhaps, even though they won't say it, perhaps was the reason why Miami decided to let go of Mike McDaniel, who, Sarah, as of Monday, was involved in the team's general manager search. And then he gets shown the door the following day. There's several jobs out there. They're lining up at the door for John Harbaugh. And Rex Ryan, a former assistant under Harbs, had this to say. And one thing Rex will never be referred to as, Sarah, when it comes to his career as a TV analyst, underwhelming. That's not him. Here he was on Saturday.
Really interesting. I mean, obviously, you've got a Hall of Fame quarterback and a Hall of Fame running back to build your offense around. But it's that defense. Like, this has a historic defense. Yeah. They got to get back to being that kind of defense if they're going to be championship caliber. I think that's what let this team down.
No question.
I thought Todd Monken did an outstanding job with this offense. So, and you're going to bring in an offensive-minded coach? I don't think that's necessary. I think you have to bring in a leader. Number one, he's replacing, all right, in my opinion, the best coach in the National Football League in John Harbaugh. And we see the difference a great coach makes. I want to get to Harbaugh for a second. Okay? Because, look, great coaches come in. Mike Vrabel came in. How did New England look this year? Pretty damn good. How about Ben Johnson? You can see the difference of a great coach.
Yes.
Well, this coach is that and then some. So whoever gets John Harbaugh, look out, NFL. Look out. If you're a team, you're hoping he doesn't be in your conference, your division.
It just cracks me up, Sarah, because we have all the snippets because it's a part of our Monday day after reaction commentary, typically all throughout the season. And I don't know if anybody was more critical of the operation at times in Baltimore over the last few years than Rex. Of course, most notably referring to Mike Macdonald in year one as a first-year defensive coordinator as the hot shot guy, right? And Mike obviously has gone on to tremendous amounts of success. So part of that is what happens. The reality of TV receipts will always be out there, Sarah. But referring to John Harbaugh today in 2026 as the best coach in the National Football League is a little bit rich. Obviously, the league, the vacancies have shown you just how much he is universally respected. But Rex will Rex, and he certainly was on Saturday morning.
Is Rex lobbying for a defensive coordinator job.
In Baltimore. In Baltimore.
They did. Well, or with John Harbaugh. I mean, they did work together once. I'm still shocked that Rex did that because Rex wanted that job.
Yeah.
He wanted that head coaching job. And by the way, he did get interviewed. I think it says something that Todd Monken is not being interviewed for this Ravens job. I think it says something. Rex Ryan was interviewed because the defensive players loved him.
Yeah.
They wanted him to be the head coach. And then John came in knowing how much they loved him and gave him the job. I thought like he could have been threatened by that. He wasn't threatened by it. I was still shocked that both John and Rex would agree to that because Rex wanted the job and Harbaugh knew that he was loved by those defensive players. And I'm sure that could have created a rift. It could have.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Rex is trying to run it back with John. Hey, John, help me get back in the league. But in all seriousness, I do think John Harbaugh is one of the best coaches in the league. That being said, the national media's commentary on this is a big gap from like more local media and plus the fans. And it's like, I think the disconnect between the national and the local is that the national is constantly looking at all 32 teams. And they're like, they probably put these different franchises in buckets and they have, stable franchises that are in the conversation every single year. Then you've got like mid franchises and then you have just like perpetually loser franchises like the Jets and the Browns. And so they probably put the Ravens, rightfully so, in a bucket of like just a stable franchise. If people are dreaming and drooling to be like the Ravens, right? And so then they're like, why are you making this? Why are you taking this risk? What are you doing? Like 18 years, he's helped you win a Super Bowl. You're always in the playoffs when Lamar's healthy, yada, yada, yada. So that's how they view it. What they don't view it as is that here in the local scene, we're watching the same movie play out every single year since 2019. It's the same movie where they like choke in the biggest moments. And you can't just keep doing that. So you can say to yourself, okay, it's a risk to move on. Maybe you're going to end up like another franchise where you have to like get a new coach every 2 years or 3 years, maybe. But for everybody here that's been seeing the same movie over and over and over again, and you can't detach John from that because when every single one of your star players chokes, it's not just one. Like if it were only Tyler Loop, okay, fine, cut him and go get another kicker. This is a one-off. But it's all your stars doing it. And so that has to be tied to the head coach. Either you're coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. They became too soft. They aren't looking at the movie the way we are. We keep watching the same movie and we're like, no, we're losing Lamar Jackson's window. Something else needs to be tried. They're looking at it through a lens of like, well, you're not the Browns and you're not the Jets, so you should be happy. And that's not the way Steve Biscotti operates. And I'm glad he's not. He made the right decision. And John will, by the way, for sure get whatever job he wants. But I guarantee you what he's going to do, the job he chooses, he's going to look at the quarterback position. And he's going to be like, okay, I want to go there. Because if I don't have another quarterback, I got nothing. I saw what happened to Belichick. I saw it. I'm not going to go do that again. But the same is true as in Baltimore. All those candidates, those 14 candidates and more to come, Clint, McDaniel, all of them have like seven or basically they're going to be interviewed by every head coaching team that's available. But I guarantee you they are also going to be looking at the quarterback position plus the stability. And if they are offered the Ravens job, the Ravens will be the number one pick. The best candidate out there will choose the Ravens if the Ravens give them an opportunity.
What's it all summed up as? If you're Steve Biscotti, the calculated risk probably worth the potential reward that's out there given the decision.